Hi, and welcome to this week's LUMOplay tutorial. This tutorial is based on 2 different requests that I got last week, 3 if you want to be very particular. 2 requests were for a rainy sidewalk or street using the fish pond effect, so that's what I've built here. And then the 3rd request was to show more of my design process, so how I actually create the video loops for these experiences. If you're not interested in the design portion, you can use the chapters in the description to skip ahead to just me making the effect itself. You can also see all of the hardware that I'm using in this interactive floor. So if you want to build an interactive floor system yourself, that's a good starting point. If you have any questions, you can reach me at info@lumoplay.com, or you can leave your questions in the comment. I answer every comment. And if you are looking at putting together an interactive floor or wall and you just want to try out our software, it is free to download from our website. So visit lumoplay.com and you can set up an account and download the software. Just make sure that you're using a computer that will actually run real-time motion graphics. So without any further ado, I'm going to show you how I made this rainy sidewalk. Basically, there is a video playing behind a ripple effect over a sort of sidewalk brick texture. And I'm going to show you how I made all of this and also how you can make it. So let's go to, first of all, my Photoshop file, and I'll show you how I built the core graphics, and then we'll go to After Effects and I'll show you how I did the animation. And then we'll head over to my LUMOplay design computer and put it all together. I start by finding a background image that I can work with. I usually use a stock site. Then I go and do an image search to get an idea in my head of the look I'm going for. These are shiny bricks. They're wet, and obviously they're a lot darker than the image that I got, so I'm gonna have to make my bricks darker. I also want my bricks to be completely under a puddle, so they're not gonna have the same texture and lighting on them, but this gives me a pretty good idea of what I want this texture to look like. So the next step is warping this image so that I can tile it. So I'm just gonna use the image warp, and I'm gonna resize the image and just get it to the place that I want to get it to. And then once I've done that, I will tile it. So I create duplicates of the image because these bricks would be huge on the floor. So I want them to be like closer to a real size of a brick. I don't know, I kind of intuitively can tell when I look at these things, because I've done them so many times, how many bricks will fit in the area of floor that I'm projecting on. But if you don't know that, then you might need to measure a brick and then measure the floor area that you're projecting on and like figure it out that way, figure out how many bricks would actually fit on that floor if you were doing realistic sized bricks. Once I've done that, then all I need to do is correct for the areas that my overlap is obvious in, because obviously I can't get this to be it's not going to be a perfect tile. There are tons of other ways to do this that do not take this long. I'm going to skip over this part so you don't have to watch me do this, but if you want to use AI, you can. I feel weird about it. I kind of, every single time I use AI, I just ask myself, like, is this worth using up water that someone could be drinking, or, you know, could be put to uses that are not a computer? Anyways, yeah, so I'll skip ahead. And here's my final Photoshop build file. So I took that image that I created using that texture and I darkened it and I made the lighting consistent across the entire image. And then I created some layers that isolate the areas between the bricks and the actual brick areas. And then I created adjustment layers. So these are just blended layers that change the lighting and create a nice lighting effect that I think is going to look really good. A thing to keep in mind when you're making effects for distortion is the more texture you have, the better. If you just have like a flat color, your distortion's not really going to show up. So adding a lot of interesting and vibrant colors and changes to your lighting, and also keeping in mind, you know, you want it to look like these, I want it to look like these bricks are underwater, so they need to be a certain level of dark. Like they can't be super lit up, because the assumption would be if there is that much lighting that is lighting the bricks up, then you're going to see a crazy reflection on the water, and I also don't want that. So a lot of this stuff is kind of like stuff that I've figured out over years and years and years of making environmental effects. I'm not sure that I'm the best person to teach it, but just, because you asked, this is what I go through when I'm trying to make an effect. When that's done, I import the final image into After Effects. That's my favorite compositing program. There are other ways to do this. I haven't used them, but there's definitely a lot of other ways to do this. You could make this type of effect in Blender, for instance, and output it as a movie, and it would also work. So the first step for me here is adding the CC drizzle filter on top of my effect, and that's going to give me the raindrops, but I don't like the way that they disappear. So I'm going to add a couple more layers that will kind of break it up so that it doesn't seem like they just appear and disappear really quickly. If you look at this really closely, you might be able to see what I mean. So when these ripples are done, they just kind of vanish and they like pop out of existence, and I don't like that. I can't fix it with the parameters on the actual filter, so what I'm going to do is add a turbulence to it. So I've added just like a flat gray layer, dropped the opacity down by quite a lot. I think it's at 50% opacity. I set the blending mode to soft light. I'll put it on normal so you can see what the filter is doing. But basically, this is a filter that's going to very slowly change over time and change the lighting subtly on the bricks so that you can actually kind of feel like there is lighting around that is changing. If I scrub through very quickly, you can see it changing, but if you actually just play it at normal speed, you can't. Once this is done, I basically play with the settings until I get the lighting effect that I want, and then I move on to the next layer, which is the shadows of the ripples, and that's how I'm going to kind of offset the ripples in this effect just suddenly disappearing. So I created another ripple effect, but this time on just a straight gray layer, and I upped the contrast and played around with the lighting a little bit, and in the end I ended up with a high contrast ripple effect that I can apply using the multiply blend mode, and that gives me something that looks very much like the shadows of the ripples. And because they disappear at different rates, it doesn't look quite as much like things are just popping in and out of existence. Now, one of the problems with this as a final is that both of the effects that I'm using, like the main effects, the turbulence, so the noise filter, and the drizzle filter, they're generative. So the start and end of my project are going to look different, and you'll see a jump. It won't be a seamless loop. So to make it a loop, I export the first version of this. So this is just my rough. I export that, and then I create a new project, and I put that video on 2 layers. And I also use this step to add the audio effect, so the raindrop audio effect. And I bump the video back by 5 seconds. So it starts 5 seconds late, and then I take the 5 seconds from the beginning and I push it to the end, and I just change the opacity so it blends in. And that's what creates that sort of perfect loop so that you don't see it jump when it reaches the end of the video. So that's it. I'm just going to export this video and import it onto my design machine, and we can move over there and get on with the business of making this into an interactive effect. Now that my video effect is all done and looping nicely, I can start to make the final effect in LUMOplay. And to do that, I'm going to go to Motion Maker, and I'm going to select Create on the fish pond experience. The fish pond experience, as you can tell, has audio, so I'm going to hit mute for now until we're actually going to start editing the audio. And the first thing that you'll notice is that there's fish, and that's not something that we want for this puddle effect, so I'm just going to open the fish section and set the number of fish to 0. There we go, and that's already looking more like a puddle. I am not going to use the overlays, but that's where you would put something like a logo. So if you're building an effect and you want to have a logo, or if you wanted to have an area that was sticking up or in a sheltered part of your floor that isn't getting hit by raindrops, that's what you would use to add that. And for the background, I am just going to select my rainy street video. So you can see that there are raindrops and that when a ripple effect happens, it affects the raindrops. So all I really need to do is edit the audio, make sure that the audio is to my liking, and also create a ripple effect that's a little bit less dramatic than this. So I'm going to close the background. I will go into audio and just very quickly unmute. I'm going to turn the ambient volume all the way down so there's no, all you can hear is that actual raindrop track that I chose for the video. And then for the splashes volume, I'm actually going to turn that down about halfway. So you can still hear it, but it's not quite as dramatic, and it fits in, blends in a little bit more with the background. So now that I have my audio set, I'm going to mute that again and go into the ripples. And this is going to be kind of a little bit different because I don't want it to look like a pond. I just want it to look like there's a couple centimeters of water floating over top of the bricks. So I'm going to turn everything down, intensity, density. I'm definitely going to turn the duration down because I want it to kind of vanish right away. And then this foam amount I'm going to turn down quite a bit too. So the foam just creates kind of a lighter effect the more motion there is, and we don't really need that here. So I'm going to turn that down quite a bit. It can lighten up a little bit, but I don't want it to be too dramatic. And there, now I'm pretty happy with this. I can actually turn the size up a little bit more because it disappears so quickly. And you can see the distortion effect, but you're not getting the same effect as you would if it was like ripples on a pond. So I'm really happy with that. All I need to do now is name my effect. So rainy street, and then click save and close this. The effect will open, it'll save a thumbnail so you can find it later, and all you need to do is click publish. I'm using LUMO Playmaker for this effect today. Playmaker is our agency tier, so it allows you to make as many apps using the templates that come with LUMOplay without having to pay a publishing fee, so you can make as many as you want to, and there's no additional charge. If you're using LUMO Playground, there will be a charge for each custom experience that you make, and that's because we price LUMO Playground at cost. So we don't make a profit off of it, but it just covers our costs. So if you want to do something with the advanced features, then we charge you so that we can cover our costs for those too. So hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, you can let me know. I'm just going to click publish, and it'll give me a warning that I cannot edit my effect once it's been published. Once I click OK, it will upload this to our server, and you'll be able to play it from every one of your LUMOplay installations. I hope you enjoyed this week's tutorial as much as I enjoyed making this effect. It's a really unique one. It would be really cool in a theater or a live performance or for some sort of an environmental installation. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what suggestions you might have for my next videos. If you want to get a hold of me, you can reach me at info@lumoplay.com, and please hit like, share, subscribe. All of those things really help us out. We don't want to raise our prices by having to pay for marketing. So our community has been doing a really fantastic job of letting people know that we exist, and we really appreciate you for it. And we're happy to make whatever you want to see next. So leave a comment, and I'll see you next week with my next tutorial.